ActionSA, saying it will review its approach to coalition agreements at local government level. The party says its leadership met on Wednesday to discuss the future of coalitions across the Gauteng metros. Last week, the party warning that the Democratic Alliance could also lose power in Ekurhuleni as the EFF and the ANC there have an agreement in place to unseat the mayor, current mayor, Tanya Campbell. Well, ActionSA, the national chairperson now, Michael Beaumont, joining us in studio to talk about this review that you plan to conduct around coalition agreements. Very good morning to you, sir. Thanks indeed for making it to studio. So yours is to see to it that these coalitions are stable. So what solutions are you proposing?
Well, I think the critical thing to respect at this point in time for ActionSA is that we are a serious organization. We have leadership structures. And when our leadership structures ask us to undergo a review, it might be premature for me to be able to talk about the solutions right now. We need to go through a process of introspecting in these coalitions. We need to go through a process of talking to other political parties. And I think most importantly, that process has to include a phase of talking to the South African people, who I think in many ways are not included in conversations that really do determine their futures and how their lives are dealt with in these municipalities. And we want to make sure we bring their voice into this review process as well.
And a very important point you're bringing up there, the residents of these various cities. And so you're calling for introspection first. Wednesday would have been exactly that for ActionSA. As you conducted this assessment, what would you say the impact on service delivery is or has been when these coalitions start falling apart?
Well, it's hugely problematic, Molita. Let's just, call a spade a shovel here. We need to turn around a legacy of decades of failed service delivery and corruption. That is what the agenda of these multi-party coalitions were. And you can't do that in 9 or 10 months. This isn't a sprint. You can't come in here and fix things in 9 months and things fall apart and it's all okay.
Yeah.
You've got to put together continuous and stable government for multiple terms in office if we're going to be able to address some of those very serious challenges like infrastructure backlogs that vastly exceed the budget. And that's why we have to talk about stability in coalition. Yeah. I think that's the conversation that really has to guide us going forward.
And 2 cities came up for discussion, very pointed discussions, if we are to go in accordance with what you said in the statement. The city of Ekurhuleni, you are worried, very worried there, whereas in Tshwane, you're saying you're not as worried, but the conduct of the mayor may pose serious questions. Let's start with Ekurhuleni. Sure. What's your major worry there?
Well, I think let's reflect that there is a minority coalition government in Ekurhuleni.
Yeah.
The coalition collectively has 94 seats, and you need 113 seats to get any business done in Ekurhuleni. And you may recall ActionSA went to the public earlier this year to say that we think the decision-making here is short-sighted. We think that we should be talking to political parties like the EFF on the other side of the aisle, not to be in coalition, not to co-govern, because the differences are too great, but to see if we can work together to approve budgets and to survive motions of no confidence. That advice was not heeded. And the reality is that a motion of no confidence now, coming to that municipality sponsored by the ANC and EFF, is a sure thing. It has a majority, and again, if we bring it back to the residents, it's the residents who suffer from that kind of decision-making.
So let's talk definitively then. If that motion of no confidence does come, is Tanya Campbell toast?
Well, absolutely. This is a mathematical argument. It's not a political one. So the coalition can only produce 94 seats to defend the mayor in a motion of no confidence. And ActionSA will be accounted among those 94 because we've signed an agreement and we will act in defense of our own agreement. But let's understand something very clearly, is that the ANC and EFF, who appear to have a deal when it comes to Ekurhuleni, have a majority that they can act upon to remove that government.
And we've already seen that in Johannesburg, the results of that. All right, we're going to come back to the leader of these coalition governments because you're saying something without actually saying it. Let's talk about Tshwane. How worried are you there?
I'm very concerned. And part of what we're doing in this process is reaching out to our coalition partners and the Democratic Alliance to say the decision-making we take going forward in respect of particularly the city of Tshwane, which is the only place where we now have a majority that we can defend, is going to be critical towards the stability of this arrangement. And from an ActionSA standpoint, that means how we deal with questions around the legality of the mayor's actions when it comes to this unsolicited bid in the city of Tshwane, and how we deal with alleged transgressions of the coalition agreement are both very serious questions that have to be dealt with. And we are saying to our coalition partners and the DA, if you engage us in good faith, we'll do the same with you. But you cannot expect a political party in coalition like ActionSA to defend things that are wrong because we're in coalition. Otherwise, we are no better than the governments we were meant to replace.
You've said a key word there. Randall Williams, are you saying that his conduct was wrong in that unsolicited bid? And what should be the discipline, if any?
Yeah. So ActionSA is on record in this regard. We've said we believe it was wrong. We were unapologetic and unambiguous about that fact. But what we did is saying, let us not be arrogant or act unilaterally as a political party. We're part of a coalition. Let us go back to our partners, which is what we did on the 23rd of August. We spoke to our coalition partners and we said, we believe this is a problem. We would like a solution. And collectively, the coalition said, we will investigate these things as a group and we will act against them as a group if there's found to be wrongdoing. And we believe that's the right approach to take to coalition, rather than us throwing our toys out of the cot and acting like we determine the entire coalition ourselves.
So you have said that there needs to be some kind of negotiation. You have to reach over to the aisle and talk to the EFF. Is the DA receptive to that approach?
Well, not up until now. Let's be very clear. The DA publicly communicates a position that they don't talk to the EFF. Of course, we know that's not true, because we've seen evidence of conversations taking place where the support of the EFF is being solicited. And for what it's worth, that's the approach that we've argued for, except we propose that it's done openly and transparently rather than behind a closed door.
Why do you think there's secrecy around it?
I think the DA has made a promise to the electorate that they will not talk to this party. They regard that to be a vote-winning kind of position to adopt with their voter market. But the reality is it doesn't serve well in a coalition environment where you have to be able to talk to political parties. Now, Xoli, let's agree on something. We have to discern between talking and being in formal coalition. Talking you've got to be able to do with everyone. If the ANC in Johannesburg comes up to ActionSA or another political party and says, we're in government now, I know you didn't support us, but we're developing a budget, and that budget we think should carry your service delivery requirements, would you like to make an input? Why would ActionSA not make an input so that our constituency find expression in that budget? This is what I mean by talking, which is very different to being in coalition. In coalition, you sign agreements, you co-govern in the executive. That's an altogether different prospect.
The Democratic Alliance, are you, in a way, saying here, they are the party that is placing these coalition agreements in jeopardy by, for example, talking secretly? What is the value of a surreptitious conversation with the EFF? Why not just make it public?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. What I'm not going to try and do is act as a spokesperson for the Democratic Alliance. They're going to have to answer that for themselves one day. But from our position, what's putting these coalitions in jeopardy is the antics of a larger organization in the coalition who worldwide has a responsibility to play the role of the anchor partner in the coalition. A political party who's supposed to be magnanimous, they're supposed to be mature, they're supposed to be very generous in the way that they bring political parties, recognizing that 1 and 2 seats matters a hell of a lot in an environment where you have a very narrow majority, and that their conduct reflects that. Now, our suggestion about Johannesburg is that had there been a decision to include the IFP in this coalition, in the form of speaker, and deepen the co-governance in that municipality and the power sharing, it would have stabilized the coalition long term. And that's the kind of decision-making we need for services to be turned around after all these years.
We're going to continue this conversation, or perhaps conclude it, because you do seem to be leading towards a particular decision if what you are suggesting is not adhered to. And so we're going to conclude in a moment. Let's take a break. You're watching Newsfeed AM. If you're just joining us, you'll find us right in the middle of a conversation with the ActionSA National Chairperson, Michael Beaumont, and it's all got to do with the coalition agreements that have been stitched up in the various metros in Gauteng. Let's continue the conversation then. Mr. Beaumont, you then resolve in this meeting that you held on Wednesday that, and I quote, a pragmatic approach with greater focus on service delivery and stability is going to be the way forward, at least for ActionSA. If what you have suggested during the course of our discussion here is not adhered to, particularly by the anchor of these coalition agreements, I'm talking about the Democratic Alliance here, do you have an ultimatum, and that ultimatum says, we walk, we're not going to be part of this?
Look, I think we must be very clear. Keeping a arrangement or a government in power at all costs is not the solution to anything. As political parties, we've been very critical of the ANC at times for keeping governments and office bearers in government at all costs. And ActionSA can never commit ourselves to that kind of understanding. Our coalition agreement commits us to a particular kind of service delivery and a particular kind of transparency and honesty. And if we can put that at the forefront of our agenda and we can work constructively to deliver upon that, ActionSA will be an excellent and productive coalition partner. But, you know, as far as it goes, if these things are not heard, there's no way we can just stick around at all costs, because we've got to account to the residents of these metros who expect us to play that role in this coalition.
Are you then going to actively prod the DA to
Absolutely.
say, talk to the EFF and talk to them publicly?
Well, I think the first thing is we're going to be engaging the Democratic Alliance, particularly as it relates to the relationship between our two organizations.
Yeah.
You can see these things have played out very publicly and very negatively, and they have not produced the focus on service delivery and stability that should be the core of the coalition agenda. And that needs to be dealt with on one level. But we also need to talk to the broader coalition partners about how we perceive the issue of stability, exactly the point that you're making. And if our suggestion in Ekurhuleni was not good enough in January as to how we will defend that municipality, we would like to know what the plan is. Because the plan can't simply be that we're just waiting to see when this finally just collapses. We have to have a strategy in place.
What do you suppose is the fear of the DA committing publicly to certain things that the EFF might ask for? Because if my memory serves, they have accused ActionSA at some point of being, no, it's actually the other way around. It's when Herman Mashaba was a mayor of Johannesburg, but under the DA ticket, that they accused him of being basically micromanaged by the EFF, owing to the fact that the EFF said, we're merely donating our votes to you at council for you to pass budget, things like that, but surely there was something in return. Is that the fear you think the Democratic Alliance, therefore, is reluctant to commit very publicly so that we need your help, EFF?
You know, I don't know what drives the Democratic Alliance and what their fears are. I can offer some views, but, you know, ultimately my job is to represent ActionSA more than I talk about the Democratic Alliance. I think my perspective on things from what I've seen is that they have made a promise to their voters in order to shore up a core constituency of theirs that they feel is under attack, and they want to do that by saying we don't talk to this political party. Now, again, I reiterate, I don't think it's a mature position to say you don't talk to a political party. I mean, talking is talking. Everyone in the professional and personal lives, you talk to people you don't necessarily get along with, but you have to talk to them because life and the circumstances require you to be able to at least have a working, functional relationship. Now, that's what ActionSA is advocating for. And the DA likes to suggest that during Herman Mashaba's tenure, there was this kind of quid pro quo in that kind of support. But it's not an honest allegation that they make. And I say that because the decision to go into that arrangement with the EFF wasn't made by Herman Mashaba. Herman Mashaba wasn't in the FedEx. But every one of the current leaders there now were in the FedEx when that decision was taken. But now they want to disassociate from that decision later down the line. And the simple truth is that working with political parties to identify a service delivery agenda where, for example, the EFF came to us and said, insourcing is our agenda, can you look at it? And it made sense, so we looked at it. Just like when we said inner city rejuvenation as part of our agenda, they came back and supported that as well. That's mature co-governing.
Mature co-governing, fine, but the same could be said about you. The DA is clear we won't talk to the EFF, although you are making claims today that they actually do talk to them, but they talk to them privately. Would you talk to the ANC as a sign of maturity?
Absolutely. We have announced in our press statement that we will be talking to every political party. And let us be clear.
But that goes against what you promised the voters. That
no, it
the
isn't.
ANC, you will never cooperate with it.
No, I think the point is that we will not go into formal coalition. We won't co-govern. We won't work together in the executive. That is the promise that has been made to our voters, and we are not an organisation that says one thing and does another. But at no point have we ever said we can't talk to a political party. And let me get practical, because I don't like to have these conversations on an academic level.
Yeah.
The ANC is now in government in Johannesburg by virtue of their own actions. We voted with our coalition arrangement once again. But if the Mayor Dada Marrero comes to ActionSA and says, we're developing a budget, we want to make sure that your people find expression in that budget through service delivery programs, would you like to make an input? Why would we not make an input? Why would we not engage at least at that level?
You make a good point. Michael Beaumont, let's leave the conversation there. Thank you very much. I think we've got the clarity that we needed. National Chairperson of ActionSA.